Chris Goward is the CEO and founder of Widerfunnel, and he's the author of the best-selling book with a 5-star rating on Amazon, You Should Test That. I'm now going to pass it off to Chris to begin the presentation.
Awesome. Thanks, Jackie. And it's great to have you all here today to look at an interesting case study and also added in some new context. One of the questions that we get all the time is, how does conversion optimization actually work? Is it just a statistical trick, or does it actually result in revenue? And that's what we're going to talk about today, showing a great case study plus another example with real numbers that you can take to the bank. So let's start by taking a look at the Build Direct example. And I'm also going to turn on a camera here, give this a try so that we can say hi to each other. And I know I can't see you, but at least now you can see that there's a real person here. Hi. So Build Direct is a company that we've been working with for the last couple of years, and they're the largest online retailer for heavyweight building supplies. They're really focused on building an amazing big data infrastructure background that allows them to change the way the logistical systems work and deliver 80%, up to 80% savings for their customers. So they're very data-driven, and they knew they needed to improve their conversion rate. In fact, they'd been testing for 3 years by the time they came to us at Widerfunnel, and they had some aggressive growth goals, and they still do. And their business is unique. It's really a bit of a complex business. They've got online order purchasing. They're also generating leads because it's a high order value product and service. And so they need to get more online orders, and they need to get more e-commerce leads to their sales team. So what we looked at is the fact that they've been testing for 3 years but had hit a plateau in their conversion rate. They knew they needed some dramatic improvements, and in fact they needed a website redesign at the time, but they were running into some challenges in continuing to get improvements. They were very data driven, so they wanted to do A/B testing to do it right. Now they knew, like a lot of marketers know intuitively and from experience, that website redesigns are risky. Only 24% of marketers are extremely happy with their latest website redesign. Now, when you're paying the kind of money you pay typically for website redesigns, that's a risky proposition. So what we're going to show you today is how they got a dramatic website redesign without the risk that's typically, normal website redesign. So let's take a look at how that works. But first of all, who am I? Who are we talking about here? Why am I talking about this? Widerfunnel is a conversion optimization company. We're the original since 2007, have been focusing on advancing the methods and practices and process of conversion optimization that really gets results. So I'm going to talk to you about some of the work that we're doing, but essentially this is all we do, is A/B testing and conversion optimization strategy, full service outsourced conversion optimization for all of our clients, high traffic websites, from lead generation and e-commerce retailers, affiliate marketers, anyone that's got a lot of high traffic. Typically we're working with those kind of companies to dramatically improve their results, like Build Direct. So let's look at one of the examples. Okay, start with a little teaser and a test here for you guys. This is a screenshot of their homepage that we started with back when we started the engagement with them. Now, when you look at this from the perspective of their visitors, their shoppers, their potential purchasers of flooring, how would you improve this page? Now, you may have some opinions on, what might be wrong with this page. Some people might say, well, there's a lot of links, there's a lot of text, there isn't many images, maybe there's too much imagery. But how do you actually approach this to create important improvements and not just gut feeling driven reactive improvements? So the way we approach things at Widerfunnel is by using a framework approach, a framework thinking approach. And I'm going to show you a little bit more detail in a few minutes on how to do that with 2 major frameworks. The first one here is the lift model, and I'll show you an example of how this works. And if you've been on the presentations with us before at Widerfunnel or any of the conferences that I've spoken at, you've seen the lift model. So I won't belabor it and spend a lot of time on it. There's a lot of information online that you can get about the lift model. Just Google Widerfunnel lift. But essentially, it shows the 6 conversion factors that are impacting your conversion rate right now. The value proposition is the core, and that is what is the customer expecting to receive from you? What's the real value equation that you're delivering in exchange for what you're asking for, whether it's time or money or whatever it is that they have to pay attention. The other factors simply enhance or detract from that value proposition. It could be the relevance, the clarity, the anxiety, distraction, or the urgency. All of these things factor in to your conversion rate right now on your website. And by testing within those components, you can maximize your conversion rate over time and learn how to actually drive your customers to act. So looking at that example with Build Direct, this was their homepage. Now, we identified dozens and dozens of problems or potential conversion barriers, and I'll show you a few that you might recognize on your website as well. Okay? So first of all, there was no headline. Now, a lot of retailers have this run into this barrier as well, where a lot of times they think, well, maybe the product sells itself, or just displaying, you know, the categories or a major feature or an offer, you can actually maximize conversions. But in fact, a headline is really important to deliver that value proposition message. So you're losing some relevance there. A clarity point. There's free samples was really important to this business, but the offer wasn't prominent on the homepage. The rotating banner. We've seen many retailers with rotating banners with different offers and products, and as I've shown many times in a blog post since 2010, these confuse visitors and actually reduce sales in most cases. A 3-column layout looks busy. A value proposition, there's inconsistent design, which leads to the value proposition through a halo effect. The featured products, what does featured mean? Is it featured because you want to clear out the products, or is it featured because it's a benefit to the visitor, to the shopper? Why is it important to them? And low price prominence, okay? So they were offering, part of their value proposition is saving a lot of money on flooring and heavyweight items, but that wasn't as prominent as it could be visually. So these are just a few of the main elements, and you may see some of these elements that you could try and test on your website as well. And essentially what we did then is not just make changes for the sake of gut feeling improvements, but to actually test, right? This is all about ABN testing, statistically significant controlled tests to find out what actually performs better. Now here are 3 of the variations we tested against that control. And I'm going to get you in a moment to test your conversion skills and vote on which one you think is going to win. All right. So the first one, variation A, is flooring tiles, and what you see is that we created tiles, a tiled layout of products with high price prominence. So this was aiming at the value proposition of emphasizing the price through that design, that layout, and design treatment. Variation B emphasized the categories, so the breadth of product categories with subcategory links. And then variation C took it a step further with more space for the categories and subcategories by kicking out the left column and making it a 2-column layout. So now the question is, which one won, right? I'm going to get you to vote on, we'll open up a poll here actually, so you can vote on which one you think won. Was it A, the flooring tiles, which emphasized the value proposition of price prominence, or B, emphasizing the breadth of products and categories, or C, even more breadth of categories and a reduced number of columns? So we see the votes coming in. See your votes. Right, so how many votes do we have coming in here? We see them collecting the, yeah, good, we've got your votes coming in. All right, let's open up the results and take a look at what happened. What did you say? Wow, 70% voted for variation C, and A and B are pretty closely tied, so that's interesting. Let's take a look at what actually happened in the A/B test. Turns out you're right. The majority of you got it right. There's 17% increase in conversion rate to sale, increased sales, with variation C over the control. Now what's interesting is that through another test, we tested 2 more variations of this same layout, variation C, and they're exactly the same. So don't try and pinpoint the difference here, but the difference is the links of the categories and subcategories to the different pages. In variation A, we had the original where there was a merchandising page for the category that presented the merchandise, that category and subcategory. In variation B, we hypothesized that removing that link to the merchandising page and going straight to a product list with filter and sorting capability would allow customers to get right to the products they were looking for by clicking on the products and subcategories and subcategory products. So, which one of those won? Let's open up a poll on this one as well. Take a look at variation A, which had merchandising pages, almost like interstitials, intermediary pages to merchandise, or variation B, straight to the products, where you could filter and sort by price and characteristics of the product. See the votes coming in. All right, we see the votes coming in. Good. Keep on voting. So is it A with the merchandising page, or B going straight to a product list? Okay, most of you have voted. Excellent. Let's take a look at the results. And the survey says, wow, variation B is the clear winner. 86% of you voted for variation B as the winner. So we're skipping merchandising pages, right, going straight to the product list. So in this case, it's a good thing you guys weren't picking what to go on the website without testing, because that would have seriously hurt conversion rates. In fact, having the merchandising pages lifted sales by 27% over going straight to the product list. So it turns out this is, against our original hypothesis. And that can be disappointing, but in fact, we're never disappointed in a losing result because we've learned something. If the test is set up properly, we've learned an insight. Well, now this merchandising page turns out to be important, so now we can continue to optimize that page and find the best way to merchandise this category, perhaps by adding in some other elements of filtering and sorting, and that's what turned out to work really well. So the bottom line is you've probably got some insights here on things you can test for your website, but your website, of course, needs similar attention, right? Probably needs a redesign, but you don't need a traditional website redesign. In fact, if you do a traditional website redesign, you could be getting yourself into a heap of hot water. And I'll show you how the problem with the traditional website redesign. This is what typically happens in a lot of companies, where the best of the web continues to get better, right? You've seen every month, every week, new website improvements and user experience are coming out, and the expectations of websites are improving. But if yours stays static in between websites redesigns, you're by default getting worse, just by staying the same. So typically there's a 2 to 5 year gap between your website redesigns, right? Because it's so painful that you want to forget about it for as long as possible. And so in between these, and this is assuming that you redesign your website perfectly every time and it becomes the best of the web. This is what I call the wedge of suckiness, where your website is just continuously getting worse by default. And there's more to this story that makes it even worse. Every time you launch a new website, you redesign dramatically, you're making thousands of changes to all of the elements of your website, and you have no idea which ones are impacting your conversion rate and sales, positively or negatively. This is what happens when you've seen major companies in the news relaunch their website and have a serious decline in their sales. And in fact, a lot of times they'll have to revert to the old one because it was so disastrous. This is not uncommon. In fact, it's almost the majority. The best websites today are doing it completely different. It's something that I call evolutionary site redesign, where it's really redesigned through A/B testing. The best of the web does this. You've seen companies like Amazon where they've never redesigned their website, but they continuously redesign it through testing. Booking.com does the same thing. All of the best websites online are continuously evolving now. Today, the website redesign is a dying animal. And I'm going to show you some examples of how we did it with Build Direct. Okay? As part of the conversion optimization strategy, we realized that the website design elements were also playing a part in the conversion rate. And so, starting with the left column, in fact, we were able to look and see, actually we looked at the template site-wide to find the design elements that were creating the majority of the impression of the design. The left column was one of them, the navigation at the top, and the right column elements throughout the website were also contributing. So starting with the left column, a redesigned A/B test site-wide produced a 16% lift in conversion rates and sales. Now what we're seeing here is that this didn't change any content whatsoever. All it did was make this left column more approachable to the prospects, to the shoppers. and actually they were more engaged with the left column and the navigation, and were able to find the products they wanted more easily because it was more inviting to them. The visual cues were there that removed the barriers and allowed them to enjoy the experience even more and shop and find what they actually wanted. So if someone asks you, does design matter? Well, yeah, this is a direct example of how important design and user experience is in the shopping experience. And then moving on to the right column, and then the header, navigation, site-wide, all of these elements individually contributed to a new design aesthetic that increased their sales for the company. And then, in addition to all of the site elements that were site-wide, of course, then focusing on the interior content, right? We saw the home page content, we saw the category page, the merchandising pages, and the product detail pages, and the search results pages. All of those elements within the template also needed to match and to have continuous improvement in conversion rates. So over this period of 12 months of testing, the end result for them was $1 million revenue lift on a monthly basis, directly attributed to the A/B testing conversion optimization strategy. Now, of course, we share case studies of successful results, and we're going to show dramatic examples like Build Direct, and there's a lot of examples like this. This isn't, in fact, a unique result. I mean, it's unique to Build Direct, but there are many other companies that are doing the same thing and seeing the same kinds of results. I'm going to show you another example here without showing the screenshots, because in this example we don't have the liberty to share. It's very proprietary content. But I want to show you something because this is an interesting concept. It answers one of the major questions about conversion optimization as well. I'm going to show you a series of tests we ran for this company. Now, the first test, we got an 18.8% conversion rate lift, and this is on one particular conversion path. They had many conversion paths we were testing on, but this is an example from one of them. The second test, in fact, we didn't get a winning variation at all. It happens, and this is good because it's part of the process of being disciplined and realizing that sometimes the hypotheses don't work, and that's a learning as well. And the next one, an 11.8% conversion rate lift, and then the following one, two more actually tests that did not produce a conversion rate lift, a winning variation. So this was at the 6 months of testing mark. This was the first 6 months of testing, and the client had a question about whether this money was actually going to show up in the bank, whether this was a sticky result, and should they continue doing this, right? This was a real trial period for us. So in looking at these conversion rate lifts, we multiplied out the conversion rate lift on this path, and to multiply this, remember you don't just add the conversion rates together. It's 18.8% lift multiplied by the additional 11.8% lift. So the cumulative lift as calculated by the two tests with winning results is 32.8%. So now the question is, are they really going to see 32.8% lift? Is it cumulative, or is there just some statistical trickery going on here? Right? A lot of people don't trust the stats and wonder if it's actually working. So we want to prove this out and see if it does work. Well, so what we did is we took the original control page from the start of the engagement and the final winning page at the end of 6 months. Right? This is the winning variation, and ran an A/B test from the beginning to the end using the latest traffic, and it turned out that the winning variation reinforced the magnitude of the conversion rate lift at 36.8%. So these numbers are very close and within statistical significance, which means that yes, the cumulative result of those conversion optimization winners actually do build on top of each other. It's not just a numbers trick. It worked. Okay, but we didn't stop there, right? That's only 6 months. Now we've proven that it works. Let's continue testing. So here we start some more tests, and it turns out that 2 more tests were not winners. Then the next one was an 11.4% lift, and the next one was 19.7%, and then another 13.4% lift on top of it. This was all within the same conversion path, the same funnel. So now again, this is after 12 months of testing within this path, and again, what we're asking is, wow, now that's some more big wins. Is this going to really be sticky? is this result going to stick? Because when you multiply all this together, that's 106.9% conversion rate and revenue lift, direct revenue for this company. That's more than doubling their revenue from this really critical conversion path for the company. That should make a big difference, right? But we want to validate and make sure. So at the end of 12 months, we actually went back to the very beginning of the year, took the original control, tested against the latest winning variation. And what do you think happened? Well, it turns out the latest winning variation actually had a 123.7% A/B test win against the original control, validating that, yes, the results were cumulative, were additive, they did build on each other, and in fact, there's a little bit of bonus in here, which is due to the statistical variance, but the results confirm that, yes, in fact, they got more than double the revenue in a controlled A/B test on this funnel. Okay, so that's pretty compelling. But is it just a fluke? Right? So we tested it at 6 months. We tested it at 12 months. Is it going to work in year 2? Well, we've done that. So on top of lifting the conversion rate by more than double, we've now completed the second year of testing with this company. We're actually now in year 3 of testing. And what we've done is in year 2, we got a 7.3% lift in last January, then ended up with another 15.9% lift on top of it, then another 12.8% on top of that, and then we ended up with a row of 6 non-winning tests. 6 tests, 6 A/B tests where we did not produce a winning variation. Now, that can be discouraging for a lot of people, right? Now, there's a lot of effort that goes into building these tests, but that's okay. We're in this to win it. We're in this for the long game. So what we want to do is learn from all of the winners and all of the non-winners or inconclusive ones to pull out insights on how the customers are actually responding. It turned out when we built on those insights, the next test got a 27.7% lift on the same funnel in addition to all of the other ones. So the 10th test for last year got another nearly 30% lift. Okay, so now you're going to ask, okay, we're at the end of 24 months of testing. Is it still sticky? Does it still work? By now you probably know the punchline. We've added up all of the tests, all the results from the second year of testing, and ended up cumulatively multiplying up to 79.2% lift. And then an A/B test of the year of testing validated that the result on that funnel is another 90.3% lift in addition to the over 100% lift from year 1. And guess what? We're in year 3 now, continuing to test on that funnel, and the results continue to roll in. Revenue continues to lift. And we know it's working because they send us Christmas gifts. So the money is showing up in the bank, all right? So if you want to ask the question, does conversion rate optimization ever expire? Is there ever a point when you've got diminishing returns where you should stop testing? Well, look at this example and say, hell no. No, we're not going to stop testing because the results continue to improve. And in fact, there's always room for improvement and learning until your conversion rate is 100% and you're knocking it out of the park every time. So how does this actually work? Well, I'm going to show you a little bit more detail with this particular example, this particular client, on how we built all of these to layer on top of each other. It takes a disciplined process. And then I'll show you some more details of the process, okay, in just a minute. So at the beginning of this was 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, we started with one of the pages. Let's call it the home page, right? We've tested a variety of pages on the website. And so I'm going to show you how this works. So we start with experiment 1.1, like I showed, a 7.37% lift in revenue. And the way this is structured is that we're actually testing individual hypotheses within this test to learn what actually drives people to act, to gather insights. There's 2 components that you need from every conversion optimization test. If it's built right, you should be aiming for conversion rate lift and insights in the customer. Now, each of these might produce a win. They might produce something inconclusive. They might not. They might lose against the control. But it's something we can learn. And then we move all those insights into hypotheses for the next round, where we get a 15.9% revenue lift. based on some of the insights from the first round. And then into the next round, a 24% lift, and the next one, experiment 1.4 with a 6% lift. And they continue to layer on top of each other based on insights of wins and losses and inconclusives that are driving at how does the customer actually act. And then beyond that, we've got different segments of customers. There's desktop and mobile that are leading insights to each other back and forth, and this is only 4 pages showing. So in fact, the way that we're actually testing is just like this, but much more complicated, much more complex, where we have multiple streams and multiple layers of tests building on each other, insights feeding into one another, and learning how people are really responding and how to convert them at the highest level possible through all of the touch points, through all of the customers. That's how a conversion optimization strategy that's disciplined and ongoing works for the best companies. So it requires a rigorous process. And there's a lot of tools you can go and buy right now that promise conversion optimization, promise conversion rate lift, and yeah, they're a critical component of it, but tools are only the first step. In fact, it's only one part of it. It's really about having a rigorous process that is strategic and asks the right questions. There's 2 questions you need to answer. One is, where should I test? And the second is, what should I test? I'm going to show you a high level of the process Widerfunnel uses, and you can adopt some of these practices and rigor in your company as well. And so taking a look at a high level of the Widerfunnel system, these are some of we answer these 2 questions within the system. The first phase of the engagement is developing a conversion optimization strategy where we answer the question, where should I test? This is based on digging into the analytics and voice of the customer, really understanding how we think they're responding and how we think they act and who we think they are. Looking at the market analysis, the competitive activities, and prioritizing all of the touch points of where should we focus effort to get the maximum return on effort for the testing. And then the next phase is answering the question, what should I test? And that's where we continuously optimize within those priority areas to answer hypotheses, questions that we want to ask of this visitor to get conversion rate lift and insights. So that's a high level of the process. I'm going to show you a little bit more detail, but the whole point is aiming to this step number 7 within phase 2, the iterative testing, rapid cycle testing process, where the results and the insights are really where the gold nuggets are. That's where we know we've got lift and where we're learning something about this customer that we can then feed into the next rounds and back into the strategy. So again, the first question, where should I test? What you need to answer that question is a prioritization framework. And one of the frameworks we use is called PI, and I published this in the book. You should test that, and it's online. You can Google that. Essentially, what we're doing here, and this is a simplified view of it, but we look at the potential, importance, and ease of implementation of tests in all of the potential priority areas, all of the touch points on the websites and mobile and apps. And those are based on some factors that we can gather. A lot of this information is easy to gather if you know how to look at it correctly. The potential is based on the web analytics, the voice of the customer, and heuristic analysis, essentially answering the question, how bad is this page or this touch point? The importance is the traffic volume, the cost of each page, right? How important is it to converting and generating revenue? And then the ease of implementation includes the technical ease and sometimes the political ease. A lot of times if you're in a large organization, you got to be careful about which ones have some stickiness, sticky points, or sticky barriers, I should say, to getting tests running. And so what you can do is take these 3 factors and actually rank all of the potential test areas in your website and apps, and then look at a ranking of an average of these factors, and this becomes a discussion point, a tool that you can actually use within your organization to agree on how are we going to get the biggest bang for our effort. This is sometimes one of the most important decisions you can make. In a lot of cases, we've had clients come to us where they've been testing on pages and spending a lot of time and effort, sometimes for many months, on pages they think are really important because they might have a high bounce rate, or they might be spending a lot of AdWords ads getting them to this landing page. But when you look at the whole perspective of all of the touch points, they might not actually be that important, and they could be down in the weeds in the secondary and tertiary types of pages when there's much more important elements staring them right in the face. So start with this, where should I test question? And then you can end up creating a strategy that layers and builds on each other, and one of the factors to look at is which pages are going to give me the most insights that can then feed into other pages that are also important to the business. So once you've got your prioritization, the next question is, what should I test? Right? Now I'm looking at a page that I know is important. It's got a lot of traffic coming here. It's critical in the conversion funnel. But how do I improve conversion rates here? That's where you need a hypothesis framework, a way to organize your thinking on creating powerful hypotheses. And a hypothesis is a scientific word, but really it just means a question that you're asking of your visitor. So the framework I already showed you is called the LIFT model that we use, and we have various frameworks that we use in here, but the LIFT model is a simplified view showing the conversion factors that influence your conversion rate and allow you to think from the perspective of your visitor. Now, there are all kinds of blog posts you can find out there on ideas to test. So here's a whole bunch of ideas. You could test value proposition statements, landing pages, shopping paths, layouts, right? Your shopping cart, your cross-sell placement, your upsell, persistent calls to action site-wide. All of these things are great ideas, but how do you fit them within a framework that actually solves problems for your shoppers? That's where framework thinking is really important, to discipline to answer the right questions. So thinking about the LIFT model, this is a framework you can use to discipline your thinking in creating powerful hypotheses that really solve barriers for your shoppers. There's 6 factors. There's actually 27 sub-factors that influence conversion rates. Now, starting with the 6 is a good starting point. That'll give you a lot to work with. But for more advanced ideas, you can look at all 27 and really categorize which ones have the most elasticity to drive conversion rate lift within your conversion paths. Okay, so what you've seen today is 2 frameworks you can use, an example that gives you a strong business case for why conversion optimization is the right strategy if you're not using it in your company. And let's take a look actually now I'm going to show you keys to success, 3 keys that you can use, but we took a poll at the beginning for how your operation is doing conversion optimization. Let's take a look at those results. So what we showed how do you implement your conversion optimization. That's what we asked. 66% are doing it in-house, 13 using an external agency, some are freelancers, and 18% say they don't do conversion optimization. Now, if you're in that 18%, you've seen a good case today that I hope will convince you that you really need to get on top of this. If you're doing it in-house, that's great. I hope your results are playing this out. And the big question to ask yourself is, do you have a disciplined process and a continuous source for new ideas? That's one of the benefits of an outsourced agency, is that continuous exposure to different conversion paths and learning can help to improve your own conversion rates as well. And the process is the most important part. So I've given you some frameworks and tips you can use for that as well. All right, so let's take a look at the 3 keys to success that I want to leave you with. If you take nothing else away from today, and I know I've given you a lot of information, remember these 3 things. First of all, in your organization, replace best practices with tested practices. If someone says, you know what, this is a best practice, we're just going to implement this best practice in our company, look at this XYZ company, they're doing the same thing, I mean, it's got to work. I hope you'll respond and say, you should test that. Great idea. You should test that. The second thing is to focus on the process. Great ideas are out there all over the place, but the process, having a rigorous disciplined process on an ongoing basis, as we've shown with that second example today, will result in wins. And focus on the long term on the strategy, and getting that process right will get you the best results. And then remember that the 2 things you want to aim for from every test is a good lift and a smart insight. And that'll lead to even more lifts in the future. All right? So I'll leave you with that, and we've got a Q&A starting in just a couple minutes. In the meantime, we have a few announcements that I'll hand back to Jackie to kick us off with.
Thanks, Chris. So as Chris said, that marks the end of our presentation. I hope you found it informative. We will be hosting a Q&A in just a minute, but before, I would like to make a couple announcements. As I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, we will be giving away a free copy of You Should Test That. Our presenter, Chris Goward, is the author of the best-selling book, which has revolutionized the CRO industry. If you are looking to improve your conversion rates, it's $30 well spent. For more information or to download a free chapter of the book, visit youshouldtestthat.com. For more information about Widerfunnel, please email iwant@widerfunnel.com or go to our website, widerfunnel.com. Now I'll pass it back to Chris to start the Q&A.
All right, so we see some questions coming in, and so feel free if you do have some questions coming out of the webinar, or anything about conversion optimization, or anything in general, shoot for the moon. Go ahead and enter those into the right panel, and we'll see if we can answer some of those for you. All right. So there's a question here. Does just providing better copy matter? So far, you focused on visuals making all the difference. Okay, no, that's a good question. Based on the presentation today, yeah, a lot of the changes were visuals, but those certainly aren't all the tests we run. In fact, most of the biggest wins we've had are from copy changes, and that's where we're aiming for insights in value proposition, understanding the triggers to move people to action. In fact, there are some tests where some amazing wins. In fact, one where we just had we tested a tagline addition to a logo for one of our clients. Ended up producing just massive win site-wide and producing, in fact, an embarrassing amount of money for the company, because what it did is it clarified the value proposition of the company. And that tagline, those 4 words, are now critical to the company and being rolled out across their marketing activities. Sometimes there will be copy on buttons, sometimes it'll be headlines, sometimes it'll be whole redesigns of landing pages with rewritten copy. Sometimes we'll be testing short pages versus a story-based approach to a landing page or a product page versus a testimonial-based approach versus a long copy feature-based approach. There are many different approaches to copy that can make huge improvements and changes in conversion rate. Yeah, so I don't want you to give you the impression that design is the most important thing, but today we're looking at redesign as a strategy using A/B testing. So, the examples were perhaps emphasizing that today.